these were ones that we identified during the recording they were definitely extended conversations that we knew we weren't going to have enough room for, but they were things that we did not want to leave out.
For sure.
Right.
And this one in particular, this one with the mayor, was
a
full conversation about Polson Park, about what the city of Vernon is doing towards sustainability.
And how often do you get the mayor one-on-one for an hour captive in your sound studio with a microphone and get to ask him anything you want?
Well, yeah, for sure. We had an hour, but for the episode that we submitted for our big release, the Backyards to Boardrooms series thing that we were talking about with the United Nations, I only needed 20 minutes.
I know, right? 20 minutes max. So what did we have? 52 minutes or something that we had left?
Something like that. But I cut out this 10-minute segment it's about what we're talking about in the episode, but it was this fully succinct conversation with the mayor, and I'm really excited to share it because he talks about the naturalization of Polson Park.
Right. It's something we've all been watching. We've all been watching this transition, this transformation of Polson Park, which is the gem of Vernon, I've heard people call it, right?
You see these big trees coming out off of the highway and what is going on?
Well, if you didn't know what was going on, you'd be thinking, what are these people doing down there? Yeah.
So check out this conversation.
And probably the most important thing we can do as a city of Vernon is to slowly densify. Now, that doesn't mean 10 and 15-story buildings. It means where we've got 1 or 1.5 stories, we go to 3 stories. So you're getting a doubling or a tripling of the density, particularly in the bowl. They'll know what I mean when I say the bowl, because then that allows people to shorten their trips. It allows more people to shorten their trips.
Right.
And those shorter trips can be done with other modes, not necessarily by vehicle. When we introduced the electric kick scooters in 2020, we thought it would be sort of a slow uptake when it was introduced in the last day of July. And use exploded within 2 weeks.
Fast.
I mean, hardly any marketing, hardly anything, and it just exploded. And 40% of those trips actually replace a vehicle's trip. So this is where you see the switches in technology, switches in use patterns having a dramatic impact on our greenhouse gas production, while providing people with a quick, safe, fun method of getting around. And if more people are living in the bowl, then these kinds of alternatives become a very significant option for 8 or 9 months of the year. So we're finding that. So there's something that anybody who's been on them, liked them, enjoys them. They're a bit of fun. They go quick. But it also reduces our greenhouse gases. And that's really, in a sector, in an area, this area of transportation, that's critical.
Is that the role of the Climate Action Advisory Committee, is to kind of come to the table with some of these ideas and present them, and then they're discussed? Maybe give us a little background on how the CAAC actually works.
A task force was created by the council more than 6 years ago, and that said, okay, what's the current situation in terms of our climate situation, and what are the very specific things we can do? And that's why it's called an action plan. And out of that task force, the council today realized this needs to be a permanent committee, because this committee is going to be working on implementation of all of these recommendations and suggestions. So it's a citizens committee. It meets 8-9 times a year. It looks at these implementation objectives and then comes up with Vernon-centric actual things that you can do on Tuesday morning. And then it finds a way of funding them or resourcing them in some ways or supporting things that other people are doing that actually is going to make a difference. So this Citizens Committee has been very strong, and people on it have been very capable, including some students. It just really gives it a Tuesday morning, what are we doing kind of feel. And that puts pressure on our systems, which is really good. It's good to have this kind of clarity particularly from our youth and some of us older
Yes.
folks who are impatient. It's helpful to have a place where these things happen. So you'll get support for the things like naturalizing Polson Park, which was a requirement from Department of Fisheries and Oceans because we needed to deal more effectively with fish and stream and water quality, et cetera, et cetera. So this will help our contribution to our climate, and it will improve Polson Park quite significantly, and it'll definitely improve access to spawning grounds for both kokanee and the sockeye that we expect starting to come in 2027.
And you've
So,
seen fish start to come back
Yeah.
through
oh yeah,
Polson
it
Park
was
already,
exciting.
haven't you?
saying, yeah.
It was immediate.
Yeah.
It was we were given a tour while construction was still on, construction out of the creek, and holy smokes, there's kokanee popping up, swimming gently, and then over these little falls that are naturally built into
So
the
cool.
next pool. Because historically, because it was concrete, the water went too fast, so there was no pausing places. Fish need to be able to come up over something, pause, get their energy again, swim upstream a little bit, then up over the next one. That's what's best for fish. And it was very cool to be there that day, just having a look. And oh my goodness, here they come! So it was very exciting to see that. And then some spawning beds have been built in that first phase, both for sockeye and for kokanee, which require different types of beds. So there's been specific gravels put in to allow both of those to spawn starting this fall. They've been spawning, and we've seen some sockeye spawning in the lake this year, so we expect them up the stream by 2027.
So it's that kind of example. It's like you said, literally within 4 weeks of that transformation happening in that park, the ecosystem came back.
Yeah, it just starts to come back really rapidly, much to the surprise of us and the construction crew. But there is large leaking out of the bank on the south side, so the hospital side. There is springs just pouring out of the bottom of that hillside, which were buried in concrete and stuff, and you never saw.
Wow.
But if you go there today or go there next week, you'll see the whole side facing the hospital is just weeping in volume. So now they've had to redesign how they're going to put in the walkway they had planned, etc. That all has to change. So you're going to see reeds in there naturally occurring because it's a wetland, which previously was just concreted in and soil put on top and grass and people wondering why it's marshy. Anyway, that's an example of
so cool.
And the trees that came down, no one likes to see big trees come down, but people need to know most of those trees had aged out. They were beginning to have core rot.
70 they weren't native
years
to this area.
No, and 70 or 80 years of a willow is about the maximum you can expect, and then the core rot develops and limbs falling off in a park that are 12, 18 inches across. Not a good thing, not a safe thing. So removing them I know was tough, but you'll see trees replanted, and much of them again next spring just to add to what's there. And I think within 2 or 3 years, people will be saying, wow, this is unique. The other thing you could do today is you can actually now get down beside the creek. It's set up so that the fenced off areas are for vegetation, and the gravel around large stone areas, you can walk right along, which before you couldn't get access down against the edge of the creek. So I think the experience is going to improve, and I think that what we know already that the environment is going to be improved by it.
That's amazing. That's just such a cool thing. And Polson Park has been, I mean, I grew up in Vernon. And so to see the transformation has been pretty remarkable.
Well, hang on to your hat, because next year we're doing the next phase, which will be very significant as well. Yeah. So
I got to be honest, when you said there were springs coming out the side of the mountain, I was like, are they hot?
The short answer is no.
But, you didn't discover a volcano under there somewhere.
No,
right?
we're okay.
Too bad.
But one of the things people need to know is the actual play field and where the kids' playground and stuff was just becoming marshy.
Oh, it was always flooding. Kids were loving
and that's why.
Parents
it's just mushy and everything. And that's because the moisture from East Hill was coming down underneath the road and across.
Right.
And then the concrete was forcing it to pool back underneath the soil.
Oh, it wasn't
So it
making its
couldn't
way into
drain.
the creek.
So it couldn't
Right.
drain through into the creek. So now with the naturalization, you're going to see significant weeping, both from the east hillside, let's call it the north side, as well as significantly out of the south side.
Mm-hmm.
And that weeps cold water into the creek, even in the summer. And that's really important that we find ways of lowering the temperature of the water in the creek for all the other beasts and fish, etc., that need it. So
Interesting.
this will just start happening, and people go, "Oh, I didn't." We were walking it the other day when we were there and walked down. Suddenly, this mud was up over our ankles. Holy smokes! It was just because underneath that is so gooey because of the moisture that is flowing underneath. Let's call it the old soccer and football field, and it's seeping right into the side of the creek. So when you do phase 2, that we'll experience the same thing now. We'll experience moisture coming into the creek from the east hillside as well as from the hospital side.
Amazing.
So that's an example of what we can do to be more adaptive. It'll handle floods much better than it has in the past. It'll slow down the water, which is better for those who are using the water, which is really important. And it will increase the habitat for a number of the fauna and flora that depend on it.
I love that. My favorite part was when he said that after 2 weeks of fixing the creek and letting the water back in, within 2 weeks the fish were back.
The fish were back.
They came back.
And it was
just
a surprise. That. Like, they didn't even know they were coming. They just were doing a tour through Polson Park, checking on the upgrades, and there they were.
So cool. I mean, that's just, I think I like that understanding that nature is resilient enough to make a comeback.
Yes.
Even when we just make one minor shift in one direction, we can actually allow nature to do its own work. We just got to get out of the way.
For sure. Well, look what happened during the pandemic, right? Nobody was going anywhere. Nobody was flying anywhere. Yeah. And the earth got a whole lot more green.
Yeah.
Yeah. So super exciting to hear the mayor talk about that.
Yeah.
And feeds right into our whole premise behind Backyards to Boardrooms, this series that we did for TELUS Story Hive, that all you have to do is make one little change in your lifestyle, in your routine, take better care of your waste, do something, anything, and it will have an impact. That's proof. Polson Park is proof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the ripple effect of making those small changes will also have impact on our mental health as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I mentioned TELUS Story Hive. Something exciting that we've been waiting to announce. We finally have the release dates for our 8 episodes that we've been working so hard on producing over the past year. And it's been a year since since we applied for the funding. What a journey.
Yeah.
But our very first episode, actually the first 2 episodes, are going to be released on April 8th, and then 1 per week after that. We're going to post the schedule on social media and anywhere else. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we hope you love it because we've had a great time doing it and we've learned so much. And I think you're going to enjoy it and learn just as much as we did. So we're excited.
Here it comes, April 8th. Stay tuned.